Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. This is February 17th. Thanks for being a part of the BraveMaker Mastermind and Creative Support Group. This is session 38, and we have Alexander Chard, who is going to be with us today. Very excited to talk about his filmmaking and acting career, and all of you all having the opportunity to talk about, making shorts, which many of us are, and then doing more and writing and wearing all the multi hyphenate hats. We do have a new guest, our new member who joined today. So everybody welcome Gabriele Trejo. Glad you're here, Gabriele. So excited that you get to be with us now. Gabriele also is a beneficiary of a grant that some of you also have gotten, the California Arts Council grant. So if is that what no, is it called the California Arts Council? I forget. But if
It's
you
a cultural Center for Cultural Innovation.
there we go. Center for Cultural Innovation. So if you do not know about that grant, you all check it out. I know some of you have received it, and it's a great way that you can be a part of BraveMaker. And we're so happy for that. So Gabriele will be with us every Monday. So use the chat as well to introduce each other. This is a way that we can find collaborations and connections happening beyond the Monday stuff, and use your URLs, okay, so that people can click forward, as well as our special guest, who will put his information in the chat too. All right, so let me bring in Alexander. Alexander and I met on Twitter or X. And one of the things that drew me, I forget even how I started stumbling upon your stuff, Alexander, but
Mm.
you had said something about finding yourself in this challenging space. You had made a short film and doing the film festival circuit.
Yeah.
So why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit and let's talk about this journey. And then we're going to actually watch the film, the 12-minute film today, and talk about it because we haven't actually done this before in our 38 sessions, 38 weeks of doing this, where we actually watch a full short film together and then discuss. So, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. My name's Alexander CHARD. I just go by Alex. I'm an Indonesian Australian actor, writer, and director. First of all, I just want to thank you, Tony, for inviting me to this space. I think what you do with this community and this creative support group is really awesome, and I think
Yeah.
it's much needed amongst many different kind of creative groups. And I know that many creatives I know are often looking for groups like this. So I think it's awesome that you've set this up. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and get to meet all of you artists. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Australia. I grew up in Indonesia, where my mother is from, and then I finished school back in Australia. Finished high school in Australia. Growing up, I was always into theater and music, and those two things often overlapped. But finishing school, I thought my path was going to be in music. But it was my high school drama teacher who sort of gave me a nudge to join a theater company in my hometown in Australia. Um, because a friend of hers became the artistic director. So I ended up joining that theater company, and this was the first time I got to do sort of real adult plays, and I just fell in love with it. I thought, okay, this is for me. This is what I want to do. And that journey eventually led me to London, where I continued my theatre training and work. Um, and film is something that I've always loved as well, alongside theatre. It's something that you know, have just always been passionate about. Some of my earliest memories are going to the video store, not to age myself, to to the
Mm-hmm.
video store with my sister and picking out our weekly rentals and our overnight rentals, and that was always such a big thrill for me. And then going to the movies was a big thrill for me. My first job was at a movie theater, and I still say that, apart from getting to make movies now, that is still probably the most favorite job I've ever had. Um, yeah, so my path from London and going into theatre work eventually led me to LA. My wife, who is American, we'd been living in London my career there. It felt like it was kind of a little stagnant, and she was like, "Why don't we go to the States? Why don't we give LA a go, and let's sort of give the film industry a go and kind of pursue that." And so I've been here now for 10 years. And in that time, I've appeared on a few different TV shows, a few indie films, a bunch of commercials. Um, and I guess, alongside that, in this whole journey of me figuring out who I was as an artist and as an actor, writing and directing is something that's always been sort of present in my mind as something that I would want to eventually explore and land into. I think with writing, that was something that I had tried very, very early on. Um, but as many of you probably know, with writing, you can be your biggest, you can be your worst enemy. You could self sabotage the moment you put words down on the page. You can tell yourself that it's terrible, and that becomes a real obstacle to completing anything. And I went through that journey a lot, and it took me a long time to find the tools and to find the community to kind of get me into a rhythm and into a way of working that I knew would be successful as far as completing work, which is the most important, I think, first step. Um, and it was right at the beginning of the pandemic where I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing now. And the pandemic happened. And so I had all this time. Um, and yeah, dived in head first. And it really kind of um, caught me by surprise. I think how much how much I was just fell in love with it, but then also how much I was able to connect with other artists through social media, through my writing work, which then kind of led from one thing to another, and my writing work started to get some traction. And
And some of that
from
traction came through like uh contests and stuff like we
yeah,
screenplay and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Just is that the one that just started to dissolve? Is that right? Or was
yeah. So we screenplay is part of. There's a big. It's part of a big. It's like under a
ex-
big umbrella company
right.
that includes Screencraft, Coverfly.
That's right, Coverfly.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, there's a bunch of them, and yeah, I think a few of them have started to fold. Obviously, and I saw a thread about it the other day where someone was saying like, obviously it's hard to maintain like all these competing companies under the same umbrella. So I think the idea is to eventually kind of just merge them into
Hmm.
into one. So yeah, I did win a couple of competitions, which got me a bit of traction. And the thing that started happening was in these meetings, producers would often ask me like, "Do I want to direct my work? Do I want to direct?" And I had done some theater directing. I had directed some kind of promo shorts and stuff like that for theater companies I had worked with in London, but I'd never directed something I'd written myself. And whenever that question came up, I would often sort of be like, "Yeah, I want to direct, but I don't think I'm ready." But I started to think about it, and I realized that that question was probably coming up because of the specificity of my writing and my work, and maybe that these producers felt, well, to kind of see this vision through, you know, do you want to kind of have ownership of that? So I kind of reached a point where I was like, yes, I do want to direct my own work. Um, and that eventually led to the short, the 714, which we'll watch today, and I can get into the whole journey of that after we watch it. But
Cool.
yeah, that's a very long kind of rant of who I am, I guess.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely stoked to have you today. And again, kind of going back to how you and I had connected, everybody on this call will resonate. You know, you made this short film, you posted something like you got your 13th rejection from a film
Yeah,
festival, and you were kind of
yeah,
feeling all sorts of things. And as somebody
yeah.
who has, you know, I'm trying to actually use new phrasing now. I'm using I was not selected instead
Yeah,
of
yeah.
rejected, because as someone who programs a film festival, it's so hard sometimes because there are so many good films out there. And there's
Mhm.
only so many slots. So you're programming, you're selecting this group, and this group you can't select. And sometimes it's really not personal, and it
Yeah,
really could be like an amazing, well produced, well acted, amazing story, but it just we can't fit all of them in. So as I read your tweet, I was like, oh man, there's so much more there, you know, that
yeah,
we as artists don't ever really realize. And I really appreciated your candor and vulnerability out on social media. And then the reality is we talk a lot about this in our mastermind here, is that not every short film is going to have the same trajectory. We all think film festivals are the way to go, but
yeah,
putting them out on YouTube and Vimeo is a way to go and a way to get traction. And look, it brought us together. So who knows,
yeah,
as we are intersecting here, what this means right, for the future. So anything else you want to
Absolutely.
say about that before we watch the film?
Yeah, I mean that was I think that was very much a new journey for me. This was the first film that I directed and then put out into that sort of festival submission world, and so that was all very very new to me. And I think the sort of early part of that journey was a real feeling of responsibility to my cast and crew. Just feeling so proud of their work and really kind
Yeah.
of feeling a responsibility to get that out there and really wanting to share that, share what they had done. And so those moments when when it wasn't getting accepted into things, I was feeling the weight of that, not just personally as an artist, but for my entire team. Um, and I think and then alongside that, the next part I think was kind of trying to understand, like, okay, trying to look at it objectively and think, okay, well, where does my film fit in? And sort of going from submitting to bigger festivals to submitting to genre festivals, to submitting to art festivals, and trying to figure out where its audience might be. And that was a similar journey where it was like things weren't really happening. And I'm someone that I think wears my heart on my sleeve, and so yeah, that post was very much kind of just like a I felt like um at that very point in time I had sort of reached a dead end, and I didn't know how to have this film find its audience. And the response I got from you, Tony, and from many of our peers and people within the filmmaking community actually encouraged me, yeah, just to put it out into the world, like to sort of not kind of put everything on the festival route, and put it out in the world and let it organically find its people and its voice. And that's the path I ended up taking, and it's been, yeah, really special and awesome to see that and to experience it and to finally have people kind of connect with it, um and get feedback on that, but also just know that, like, I think I had to just go through that journey of learning myself, of like, yeah, the festival path isn't, it's not the be all and end all. The work is the most important thing. The collaboration is the most important thing, and then you put it out into the world, and it'll find its people.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of the journey it's been on, and how I've grown through it as well.
Good. Okay, that's great. I think we all feel for you and feel that journey and trying to figure it out. Sometimes it seems super clear, and sometimes it doesn't. And I've
Mhm.
shared this story before, but a friend and fellow BraveMaker person has had a film done for a year and a half now, short, and has been really hoping and waiting for that film festival selection to happen, and it has not been out anywhere online. And we accepted them last year in our film festival 2024, and they said, we know we're going to wait, we think we might have a lead in this bigger film festival. I was like, okay, cool. And they didn't get in, and so then here we are, coming back this year, and I said, why don't you just resubmit to BraveMaker, you know and we'll probably program it this year, July. But the fact that this person's almost been waiting almost 2 years with a
Yeah,
short,
yeah.
you got to figure it out. You got to bite I don't like the,
Mhm.
but I appreciate what you did. So with no further ado, let's watch. Give us the title, log line, anything else you want us to know about before we watch this.
Yeah, so 714. So just to give you a sense, first of all, of my style of writing, I guess, and what I kind of like to um, write, is I often describe my writing as intimate family dramas wrapped in the extraordinary. Um, um, so that's my work in a nutshell. And 714 is a story about this man. So as the world comes to an end, um, oh no, I've forgotten the log line off the top of my head. Wait, let me pull it up. Always remember your log lines. Um, so 714 is a story about a man when his wife and child choose to leave for a world beyond ours. This grieving man must fight his guilt and decide whether to remain in their home that haunts him or follow them into the unknown. And
Awesome.
that's it. Yeah, I'll just tee it up with that, and we can discuss at the end.
Okay, cool. So here's my encouragement to you all. It's just 12 minutes, a little over 12 minutes. Put your phones on silent, put your volume up so it's at a comfortable level, and we'll come back and talk to Alex when it's finished. Here we go. All right, hold on a second. Let me restart this.
Come on, Papa, wake up. Papa, you promised me pancakes for my birthday.
You promised her, Papa.
I know, Mama.
You may hate me for the choice I made, but you're not abandoning Maya. Not today. Promise me?
Are you ready for pancakes? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Happy birthday to you.
Maya, come. Look what Daddy has.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, sweet Maya.
Sweetheart, come sit down.
Happy birthday to you. Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray! Hooray!
Happy birthday, sweet Maya.
Ibu, I didn't think you were...
Jangan khawatir, Ibu nggak kemana-mana.
Okay. What's your recipe? Maya's favorite.
It's perfect.
Rations won't last much longer. Have a bit of water.
Sabar, nak. Pasrah saja.
Aku mengerti sekarang, Ibu.
Mengerti apa?
My weakness was my betrayal.
Kamu sakit. Mereka sudah memaafkan.
I still hear them.
Love cannot be broken by our perception of time or space. Kamu tidak percaya waktu Ibu suka cerita tentang leluhur kita.
I have to leave this place.
Kalau kamu pergi, kamu tidak akan kembali. The world out there is unforgiving.
I heard a message calling us, saying that they'd return all of them and we would be saved. Aku harus tahu, Ibu. Aku harus tahu mereka akan kembali untuk aku. If I wait here, then I'm just waiting. But if I reach them, they'll know it's because I lived. Will you come with me?
Small is the gate and narrow the path that leads to life. And only few will find it.
are left to contemplate our survival on this dying planet. It feels like the end is inevitable, but we must ask ourselves, will we see our families again? Or will they come back and take us with them?
Ayo.
Remainers, go forth and make the pilgrimage. We must gather on the mountaintop, where we will wait for them, where they will return to us and save us. They will save us. They will save us.
Celeste. Maya.
We'll let the credits roll here. Feel free to use the chat for comments and questions, observations, anything that hit you as you watched. All right, and that is the film 714. Thank you so much, Alex, for letting us watch that. And I get the privilege of having the floor to start, but we'll invite other people. But I think it's just a really beautiful, beautiful short, and you have a great presence on screen, bro, as an actor. I feel, and I hope this gets you, some more opportunities for acting, because you did it, dude. You did that thing really, really
Thank you
well.
so much. Thank
Really
you.
Grounded. I love dystopian stuff too. And I can tell you're playing with themes of, grief and loss and family. And anytime I hear a kid laugh, oh my gosh, that's just going to get my heart as a dad of 3 daughters. So you got me on that. Kelly says, and Olga, let's see, go back here. So beautiful. Where was this filmed? Is the question. Powerful line in the film. My weakness was my betrayal. Ooh, admitting this is huge. Love cannot be broken by the perception of time and space. So good. And Gabrielle says, I love that you included your heart language with the mom. I was thinking that too, Stacy said. Is that your real mom in the film, by the way?
That is my real mom. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the first time she had ever acted in anything. So that was a real incredible part of the experience, having my mom come in to do this project. Um, yeah, she had never acted. I wrote that scene as very much an echo of conversations her and I have had throughout my life and throughout periods, I think, of struggle, where we've kind of leaned into our culture as a means of a path, sometimes out of the darkness, and this idea that love and sort of ancestral love can kind of lift us out of that. Um, and she just happened to be here on a vacation as we were in pre-production, and I kind of pitched it to her, and I was like, "Would you like to do this?" And to my surprise, she said yes very quickly. And we did a read together, and her first read wasn't very good. And I remember telling my wife that night, I was like, "I think I'm gonna have to take back my offer to my mom." But look, it's not that she wasn't good. I think it's just that thing when when you give a non-actor, and actors are guilty of this too when you first get a script, you when it's not in your bones yet, you put performance on top of it. And for people that don't act or don't have the tools to kind of navigate through that immediately, that's kind of what happens. You sort of deliberately kind of make a. That's okay.
There we go. Keep going.
Yeah. So I think with non-actors, when you read it, when you get a script, your instinct is, oh, I'm acting in this, so I'm gonna act. And that's all that she did. And I just said to her at the time, I was like, look, just learn these lines and get them in your bones, and just know, block out all the other noise. The idea that we're filming, that there's going to be a crew, like this is just a conversation between you and I. And she went away to visit my brother who lives on the East Coast of the States, and for 2 weeks. And I was like, while you're there, just yeah, get this into your body, into your bones. And to her credit, she came back, and it was she was dialed in. And the biggest privilege, I think, of it all that I love to share with people is that she has been my biggest supporter in this sort of long pursuit of a creative life. And as I'm sure you all know, those people that like will hold you up in this pursuit of being a creative person and trying to make a living out of it, or at least committing hours upon hours of time in expressing your sort of artistic needs and desires. You need those people that are going to hold you up. And she has always been that for me, like always supported me, always encouraged me to persevere when I felt things had been too tough and I felt the grind. And to have this opportunity to bring her into my world and to share that with her is something I'll just treasure forever. It was really, really awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah. So anybody else who wants to ask questions, we'll move into that time. But yeah, I think there's in a 12-minute and change short film, I think you did a lot there. And I think you made the right choice to put it out into the world and to not wait on someone else to select it, because there's so much beauty there. I mean, the crew, the special effects like that aren't cheap. And sometimes even when they do cost some money, they're not always good. And I felt like they all looked really great. It didn't take me, it kept me engaged. The editing style, all the different kind of cuts between different things. I was like, wow. So I definitely have some questions around your production and the planning. And Dashiell's in there asking about storyboards and anytime when you were making it. The question from Gwen about where was it filmed? Very gorgeous location. Even like the wind in that house, oh my gosh, like the barrenness of the desert. So speak to that a little bit, and then we can invite people to come and ask questions up on the
So where it was shot, I'll just start there. We shot in Palmdale and Mojave, so just like an hour and a half north of LA. The house was not in Palmdale, in Lancaster. It was this old house that had been in this one family for, I want to say close to 100, not 100 years, but like multiple generations. Where as soon as we saw it, it sort of had matched a lot of the visual references I had given my production team, and we all sort of fell in love with it. And I had amazing producer on the short, Halen Kwan, who managed to get just negotiated a really great deal for us to be able to use this space.
Now, are all the windows practical locations, or is that green screened in?
No, that is all practical. So that was like a big draw. So this part. So there were two parts to the house. The house, there was a front house where the opening part is, where I'm making the breakfast, and then where you see that I'm alone, and then the scene where I'm with my mom, that was like in another sort of house on the property, and it was just all open like that. And the day we went there to do a scout, it was a clear day, and you could just see the mountains on the horizon. And a big part of what was important for me with the storytelling of 714 was, again, to create something that felt very intimate and very personal, but I wanted to give a sense of scope and scale to this world. So when we saw that room and we saw that you could see the mountains outside, that immediately was like, that's what we need.
Yeah,
like
perfect.
that's what we need to kind of create that sense of scope, and that there's this bigger, wider world out there that because a big part of it is Noah's courage to kind of step out into that and to leave the safety of this place, even if it holds sort of his most painful memories. So that was really important to me, that you had this sort of sense and scale of scope of a wider world. So that location just ended up working out.
So did you have to do a lot of production design, or was it kind of like this is what it looked like for the most part inside?
For the most part, it already looked like this. So so yeah, like if you want to just pause here, like so what my production team added into this kitchen, we didn't, like, the fridge was there, the stove was there. That's how it looked. We added, what then became exciting for me was how do we create rich details within this space to kind of give a sense of who Noah is, and his life, and also the conditions he's in. So like the details of the water bottles that I pick up and I shake. Initially, that pancake scene we had shot as a 1-0, but it was just too long. It was too long, and it didn't advance the story in the right way. And I think the reason why I wanted it as a 1-0 initially was to kind of to give you that sort of rich detail of this space that he's inhabiting. But it didn't work pacing wise. So we broke it up into parts where you're seeing the important and crucial details. So at the very beginning of that scene, when he walks into the room, and these little details are kind of like blink and you miss it kind of thing, but they're all there. So like when he first walks into that room, you'll see on the wall, on the door frame. No, so even before this, like right after the bedroom scene. So go back, keep going. Okay, so right after here, stop there. So on that door frame, you can see Maya's height, where she's written her height, where he's like logged her height as she's gotten older. The idea was that like he's kind of continued this even after she's gone. And then as we go into the room,
that's a great detail, by the way, though. That's a really great detail. Yeah.
And then so like everything here, like with the rations, the water bottles, that's all production stuff that we added. That TV set was there when we did the scout, and it was playing an old timey cartoon. And that was like another freaky moment where it was like, okay, this is too sort of serendipitous that we had, like, this is it. This is what we need to use. On the wall there, you see a children's drawing. Another little detail that kind of foreshadows or sort of tells what happened to Maya and Celeste. It's sort of a scene, it's a children's drawing of a mountain with a kind of purple orb in the sky, right there as I move my shoulder. With it's like an adult, a woman and a child.
Yeah.
That's like just little details I tried to throw in again to kind of just paint
beautiful
the picture of this world. And that was a really exciting part for me, because when we saw the location, we knew that it was like, okay, this fits the tone of some of the sort of references I gave to my production designer. And so really, like I said, it was just how do we layer that with details that just make the world more rich and feel more lived in.
Yeah, you definitely did it. All right, who would like to come to the forefront, meet Alex, ask a question? Most of you, and I like that you also talked about actors, in regards to your mom, because we've got a fair amount of actors on this thing. Is just the groundedness of just having a conversation, staying in a connected conversation with a scene partner, and not trying to force and put on the performance. It's like, how can I be present to what this person is saying and doing? Great example, that you had with your mom as you directed her. We got Gwen. I'll bring Gwen to the forefront, who just did her first directorial debut in a short. Hi, Gwen.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for coming and for showing us your short. That was really beautiful and so emotional. I thought it was amazing.
Thank you, Gwen.
You mentioned something about ancestral love lifting us out of the darkness. And I feel I definitely feel like the process of making the film in its entirety has these amazing highs and lows. Um, and and I'm wondering things that you do to help yourself when you're in the lows. And of course, being an actor, I'm sure you have a lot of experience with the lows as well. So I would just love to hear, some suggestions from you on that.
Yeah, I mean that is sort of the I think eternal struggle, I think. And and I think that's why this film is very personal. I have wanted this. I want this film to mean whatever it means to people that watch it, right? But the way that I would describe it to my team as we build our team and people that were kind of coming on board to align them with the vision was that this story is very much sort of an abstract reflection of living with depression, something that I've experienced, something that I've witnessed my mum experience. Um, so it is something, yes, those highs and lows with an arts career, I feel I can feel intensely at times. And I think there's many different ways to kind of that I've navigated through that. I think there's certainly healthy ways and more unhealthier ways. Whether whether that's like indulging in foods to mask my feelings, but I think that the best way sometimes um, is to just. So I think like for me, sometimes if I'm in a low, it blocks my creativity, or it becomes this kind of cyclical thing where I let it impact the creativity, and then I feel shame and guilt about that, and it becomes this cycle where actually I become less creative. And I think sometimes the best thing to do is to actually step away from it and step into the other things that you love in life, whether that's your relationships or hobbies, um, uh, spending time with your dogs, going for walks. For me, it's doing those things. It's also surfing. And when I actually step outside of it, and I step outside of um, the sort of the struggles of the creative life, or what feel like the struggles of the creative life, um, and I let it go, that's when I'm actually pulled back and things spark again and things um, ignite again and then bring me back to my laptop to write or give me an inspiration for the next character that I have to dive into if it's an acting project or um, and so I think that's how I try and navigate it. The best way I try and navigate it. But life and navigating these things is can be messy and difficult, and sometimes you don't always do the right path, and you can get into cycles where it feels hard to get out of. But for me, it's just like, um, yeah, either stepping away or and then just trusting that the things ebb and flow. You always come out. When you're down, it always comes back up. I hope that helps in some way.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thanks.
And
Thanks. I appreciate that.
thanks, Alex. This reminds me of Noah, your character. That was definitely one of those examples of someone going through grief, and grief does have its ups and downs. Sometimes I'm going through my own sense of things right now, processing some life and some friends and some loss and things. And yeah, it's life. It's so hard
Yeah.
to step back and recognize this is life. Life, like we have people one day and then we don't have people the next day. And
Yeah.
oof,
And I think it's also too, it's like we sometimes have to remember, and I think this is sort of in part what Noah experiences in that story is that you you always have a choice. You always have a choice, right? Like he has to choose to either stay in the place that holds these memories, but in some ways, as painful as it is, feel safe, or to take that step into the unknown, um, where the reward being the maybe reconciliation with his wife and daughter will be the greatest thing. But it's like it's taking that step, and we always have that choice to whether it's to turn up to our laptop and write for the day, whether it's to to just go into that audition and lose sort of self-consciousness and just throw everything into it. Like, we always have a choice. And I think that's sort of something I have to remind myself too, is that, yeah, you know, yeah.
Choices. Thanks, Alex. We'll bring up Olga, and then I see Stacy's hand, and then Dashiell, I'm seeing your hand, but make sure you all use the hand raise because that shows up and points you to the front of the line on the Zoom. Go ahead, Olga. Hi. Morning.
Tony, hi everyone, and Alex, nice to meet you. We were
There we
trying,
go.
but yes, my question is more about music because the score I thought was incredible. It really just filled those gaps for emotional waves and just progression of the character's journey.
Mhm.
And my question is, did you work with the music team on the score while writing, while actually putting things together in post, or did you tell them about the story and they knew what to write? Like, how did you approach the music writing, and did you change a lot since the first draft of the soundtrack? Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Olga. That's a great question. Yeah, so the way that the sort of that all came together was I had worked on another friend's short. She had won a short film grant, and I had been brought on to help do a bit of a polish on the script with the intention to kind of develop that into a feature with her. And she worked on this short was a rom-com, which is not my usual style, but she's a Indonesian filmmaker as well. So that was like why I went into that project. Anyway, she had a composer on that called Matthew Wong, and he did the score for that short. And the producer of my short film was the producer on her short film. And when we were kind of going through lists of ideas of who to sort of bring on to sort of do the music, Matthew's name came up again. And I had only known his work from this rom-com, and which was great and it was perfect for a rom-com. But I was like, if that's his usual direction, this isn't gonna maybe work, or it might be a more not work. It'll be a more challenging kind of path forward. But my producer Tony was like, no, this is the rom-com was the outlier, which then made me feel more confident. Where I was like, oh, if that's what he can do in a style that he doesn't usually do, let's hear what he usually does. And yeah, so I got to listen to some of his work, and there were a couple of tracks on his website that immediately resonated with me as kind of reference points. And so then I met up with him, and that's what really helped, was that he already had sort of samples where I was like, okay, this is a kind of reference for the direction that I want to take the score into. And then we had conversations. We had conversations about what the script meant to me, what it meant to him. You know, my whole thing with my team and how I like to work is I like everyone to get aligned with my intentions, but I like to give people the freedom to explore what that means to them. You know, and let the best ideas come to the top and sort of support and elevate those. So with him, you know, my conversation, and which was the conversation I had with a lot of the team, as I sort of mentioned earlier, was okay. Well, the intention of this is to, you know, this world is a manifestation of Noah living with depression, and it's about that journey and that choice to choose healing and to kind of find a path that reunites you with your loved ones, because living with depression can make you feel so isolated from that. So that was kind of what I fed to Matthew, and he gave me back his ideas. And you know, and this was when we were still very early in pre-production. And so he basically was like, okay, here's a few ideas that I'm thinking, like this is how I think this can marry with this idea, and blah blah blah. And we just had a back and forth like that. And then we went and made the film, and I didn't talk to him for a little bit. And then when we were editing, we started just sending him some clips. And my editor, who's a really good friend of mine, he put in a temp score, used a lot of the score from Arrival, when it was in the temp.
That's
again,
that's a great comp for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was a big kind of reference point for us. So that also helped Matthew. Um, and then it was just a back and forth through that process then of him sending ideas and I think having a kind of music background also helped me in the sort of language of communicating with him of like the details of the score. Um, and how to develop it. You know, the idea was to sort of, you know, we're dealing with a story that deals with the duality of this sort of like fantasy world that he lives in, and the duality of this stark, barren reality, and sort of having two contrasting feels to that. Um, and then having those things, those elements marrying at the end. So this last bit at the this sort of like last montage sequence, if you listen to that again, you'll hear the kind of marriage of those different elements throughout the film kind of begin to merge, um, with the idea that we're now like in his, this is the reality that we're in. Um, a really another lovely element too was that in that scene with my mum, we spoke about putting in traditional Indonesian instruments, and one of those is the gamelan, which is sort of um, like a traditional kind of xylophone type instrument. And so a lot of those sounds that you hear in that scene, like the ding ding ding, sort of sound like wind chimes knocking just gamelan notes that he was able to kind of create and um, sort of layer in through there as well. Um, so yeah, so it was a process. It was a constant conversation right from the very beginning, and aligning our ideas, and then just a really really collaborative, fun back and forth. I really loved working with him. It was great.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
beautiful stuff. I'm gonna bring in our Stacy, and I will pin you, and I'll pin back. There we go. Hi,
Hi,
Stace.
hi, Alexander. Thanks so
Nice,
much.
Stacey.
Um, so when you wrote the script in earlier drafts, did you include the details of grief, or did you always know that you wanted to focus on the father's grief, not what happened to the wife and daughter or what he did to them? Because it seems like from what you're saying, it's this grief is not from death, it's something else, maybe.
Yeah, so it that was a real process. I think in earlier drafts there were more um uh it was more explicit in telling you what happens to them. You know, the opening actually had a much clearer kind of voiceover of that sort of that woman from the radio voice, sort of talking about this idea that there was some sort of like unexplained, possibly extraterrestrial event on Earth where billions of people were chosen to ascend into the stars, and Noah wasn't chosen and is now living with that. Um, and he kind of, and then within that scene with my mum, there was more dialogue too, where Noah sort of explicitly says, I think it sort of carried on after the weakness is my betrayal line, where he he more explicitly says that his depression basically was the reason why he wasn't chosen. Um, um, but in through editing it, and even editing both the script in pre-production and then in post, it became a thing where I felt like it was more important to actually be more ambiguous, uh, and lean into creating more of just a stronger emotional resonance and feeling for the audience, rather than trying to actually explain everything. Because I think it just got too sort of muddy and actually became unclearer in that way. Like the emotional part of it became unclearer. So I was sort of more unclear. So I was just like, well, let's take out some of this stuff and just actually make it a bit more ambiguous as to what happened to them, and just know, like, just let the audience know that they've left, they're gone, and that he's sort of racked with the pain of that, and this idea that in whatever way he has failed has contributed to that. So it was a process through both the drafts in pre-production, but then also in post, in figuring out what was the best way to tell that and what to lean into. Yeah, whether it was the pain of them leaving, or whether it was the pain of his failures, or whether it's this kind of mix of both. Yeah, and this is where we landed. Yeah.
I like that. Thank you, Stacey, for the question. And it reminds me of, I've said this before, but on the Script Notes podcast, John August and Craig Mazin often talk about there is a difference between confusion and mystery in storytelling. And you want, mystery is good, confusion is bad. So if your audience is like, I don't get this, what is happening? That's different. But if there's this mystery of like, wait, okay, you're giving just enough clues, you're not laying everything out, we have a kind of an understanding, that's better than even telling the audience every single thing they need to know and totally explaining everything. So I think you really found that fine line and that balance, because if it was confusing, I probably wouldn't have invited you to come. So thank you for doing that. And Dashel, you're up next. Last question. Hello. Oh, you got to unmute, buddy.
Hi, I'm Dashel, and I'm amazed by your work.
Oh, thank you, Dashel. That's really kind of you.
And so my question is more in terms of like when you were writing the script, was there ever a moment when you had writer's block? And also, how did you get through it?
Great. Yeah, okay. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I have writer's block all the time. And I think sometimes it's kind of like how Tony reframed his language with rejections, right? I think as writers, we have to sometimes reframe that language of feeling blocked, because I think that can feel sort of make it feel more difficult as something to overcome. I think it's just these are just moments, I think, in storytelling and when you're writing, when maybe it's just not ready yet, is how I've started to think about it. And with this story, when I first wrote a draft, I wrote a draft, but it didn't really have much depth or layers or even meaning to it, and I put it away for a few months. And I think yeah, you can look at that as maybe a writer's block, but I think I had to frame it as it just wasn't ready yet, and I wasn't ready to tell it, and I hadn't found what it was, what that emotional pulse was. And sometimes you can get those sparks and discoveries when you least expect them. So I went back to Australia. So I'd written it and put it away. It was like, oh, I don't think it's going to work, or I don't think it's really anything. And I went to Australia, and I think just being back there and kind of reconnecting with parts of my upbringing and family triggered an emotional response, which like I just had a moment where I was like, I know what the hook for this film is now. And it got me back into it. So I think, sometimes when we do feel blocked, or when we feel like the writing stops, I think it's important to not make ourselves feel bad about it. And just to take a moment, just put it aside and live your life, and it comes back sometimes when you least expect it, and you just have to be ready. And when it does, you just get to your computer and you'll
get to your computer and start cranking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Dashel, for the question. And we are at time. Sometimes we go over a little bit if you want to stay on for a few more minutes, everybody, or if Alex, you have time. But thank you for just joining us today, man. And thanks for
It's a
starting
real pleasure.
that we connected with your sense of kind of the crossroads, which we all identify with, what to do next. And you've talked a couple times about making choices. You got to make choices. And so can you talk a little bit, maybe in like a minute or two, where are you now? What's next? Have I'm sure you're glad you put it out, but what things have
Yeah.
become of this now that it's out in the world, the short?
Yeah. So, what's next? So yeah, putting it out into the world connected me with a bunch of other filmmakers, and it's actually led directly to my next directing opportunity.
Great.
For another short. This one I haven't written, so that's like a new challenge for me too, where it's like, okay, let's dive into something that I'm not as like really connected into, maybe emotionally, where I can look at it more objectively as a director and kind of align my vision with the writers and then bring that to life. So that's a really exciting next step for me, and an exciting thing that came out of putting this out into the world. I think we're going to be shooting in the fall. It's a sort of a thriller again, which is also kind of slightly away from what I usually write and what I usually am drawn to. And I think, and for me, that these reasons of like, yeah, picking something as my next project that I haven't written and slightly into a genre that I don't often explore was exciting for me. It was a new challenge, a new way to kind of grow as a director and as an artist. So that's really exciting. I'm back writing again. I had a little sort of spell where I wasn't, and kind of, like I spoke about before, got into that cycle of sort of negative self-talk, which was too destructive and unproductive. And I have kind of come out of that now, and have just surrendered to it a bit more, and the creativity is flooding back. So I'm really excited about that and working on a new feature. Yeah, and then just in the hustle and grind of acting auditions, and just getting auditions and trying to put my best work forward, and then sending it out into the ether and keeping my fingers crossed.
Well, good. Well,
yeah.
we definitely, for us at BraveMaker, we definitely pride ourselves on creating relationships and community. So everybody, please follow Alex on his IG. It's in the very top of the chat. If you scroll all the way up, you can see, but it's his name. So follow him. And this is where you never know, you might be casting Alex. You got to see his work there and get to know him a little bit. I think you have great acting talent, man, and I definitely wish you the best. We are doing monthly things in LA too, like BraveMaker meetups and stuff. So
correct.
I hope our paths. Yeah, I hope our paths. What part of LA are you in?
Glendale.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm probably going to be in Burbank-ish or Studio City in March
close
for our next one. Yeah, so it'll be close to you.
Yeah, definitely let me know.
But yeah, dude, let's stay connected. And BraveMaker, Mastermind people, when we put the clips up of Alex, commenting on it, resharing his short for people that you think would enjoy it. This is a way we can support one another. And I'm sure as you comment on his post, Alex is going to be looking at your stuff and looking at how he might want to partner with you all in the future. So that's how we want to create more relationships and collaborations. But let's do a quick selfie here or screenshot of everybody, and then we will get on with our week. Best way to start the week, in my opinion, is with this mastermind. So all right, everybody, here we go. Take a look into the camera, give your best face, whatever you want to do. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Okay, Alex, thank you so much, man. Thank you for sharing your work, and good luck to you. Yeah,
I'll stay on. Pleasure.
I'll stay on for a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but I'll quickly tell you. Thank you, Alex. Next week, we have Rob Ride from the American Academy of Arts in LA talking about marketing yourself, how to be your best marketer, because you have to take ownership and be an entrepreneur for your own screenwriting and acting career. And then don't forget, we have March 1st. We have the class with Justin Lee, who was our guest last week. If you want to take that 2-hour Zoom with Justin, it's March 1st, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Don't forget, you get $50 off. And it's a 2-hour Zoom focused on screenwriting. It's an intensive, but then it's also focusing on theme. How do you know what the theme is of your script? How do you make it better? And Justin did all the Lord Miller stuff, Spider-Verse, Spider-Man, Across the Universe, Los Freakies, and Mitchell's versus the Machines. That's March 1st, Saturday. Cool. All right. If anybody wants to stay on and chat a little bit longer, I'll hang on for a few minutes, but thank you all. Welcome, Gabriele. So glad that you're here.
Thanks. It was really great. Great start to the week.
Yeah, and Becca is working on her feature film, y'all. So follow Becca on Insta. We're trying to boost, someone making a feature. Let's surround each other and get these things made. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great meeting everyone.
You got it.
All right.
Anyone have any questions, comments before we fully end? I'll stop the recording.